Well, good evening, everyone. Michael Soothing here. One of my subbies asked me to do more stories from childhood. And, I've told you I have memory problems for short term memory. But ironically, I can remember in vivid detail everything that happened in my childhood. I mean, of course, not every single event 24/7, but it's like photographic memory of um, many things that happened each year. And so I thought I had something at the store that triggered a nostalgia. You know how a certain song or a certain smell, certain aroma, will trigger memories of something that happened in the distant past? Well, in this case, it was a certain taste that did it. So, and what it was, and so I thought I would go ahead and make a short video reminiscing about a period of life when it was about 10, 11 years old, 12, in that range. I lived in Southern California in a place called Rosemead and also in a place called Alhambra. They're pretty close together. Anyway, what triggered this was we wanted to try these donuts. These are not on my approved list of dietary subject matter. I wonder if I can get a thumbnail of this somehow. I wonder if YouTube will be smart enough. I never shoot thumbnails, but YouTube always seems to pick one that's appropriate if I hold this up for a while. Anyway, these are called Franz Frosted Chocolate Donuts. Now I have sampled. I'm going to let the house ghost eat most of these, of course, since they're not on my approved, diet agenda. But I tasted one, and I can tell you, I had not tasted a donut like this since I was about 10 years old. And that the nostalgia effect was striking. So I'm going to munch on a little bit of one and tell you, I know that just looks like your standard sort of chocolate French donut or whatever, but it's not. It has a unique flavor. This isn't like the ones you get at the bakery or the store, not the typical. When I take a little bite of it, it's got a light yellow cake inside. It's not crunchy on the surface the way it looks. It's very good. But I'm sorry, I don't usually do McBongs. I don't want any chocolate on my fingers. I'm kind of fastidious about it. Anyway, the flavor is exactly like a type of donut that we used to get from the bakery truck that would come around in the summertime each day in the morning. I don't know if it came around in the wintertime because I was at school, but in the summer it would come around and it would play this little tune, ding, 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 ding. No, I'm not going to try to replicate it. That won't be ASMR-like, but I remember the tune precisely. You would hear that tune, and sometimes my mom who was very, very strict with money, would let me have a nickel or two. The donuts from this bakery truck, you would run outside and flag the truck when you heard the music, right? And it would stop in front of your house. And in the back, the housewife or kids or whoever was around could buy fresh bread, which I of course didn't care about, bagels and things like that, but mainly what I was interested in was the donut rack. And they would pull out this sliding rack, and there would be all these different kinds of donuts. My favorite, I had two favorites: the cinnamon crumb donut, which I've never found one exactly like the ones that Hellman's truck had since then, and then the chocolate donut, which was shaped a little differently than this, but tasted exactly the same. So it's gonna take all my willpower not to eat this whole box of half a dozen. I'm gonna eat half of one and then leave the other half for dessert for tomorrow or something. Can I have another bite? And then I'll see if I can remember some of the other things that were going on in the summertime. Well, I remember some brutally difficult yard work because I wasn't very big and I had to push this mower. It was a push mower, of course, back then. And the yard was uneven. There was a front yard and a backyard. And I would mow the grass, and little rocks would fly up, and hit you in the head and stuff. Nowadays, I would have worn safety glasses, but I didn't know back then. All the weeding, all the watering, I did a lot of yard work. And, but the nice thing was, at the end of all that hot and sweaty activity, of course it was the LA area, so it was pretty hot and pretty smoggy. But then I would go in and take a shower and do something I wanted to do, like build a model airplane or something like that. I didn't have too many friends because, like I told you in another video recently, I was pretty aspy. So I was a lot more interested in science and hobbies and reading and fishing and things like that than hanging out with friends. But I did hang out with some Latino kids from across the street named Danny and Davy, and I had a crush on their big sister, Lupe. Did I tell you this before? And Lupe was about 14 years old or 13, but let's just say she did look like a woman already. Now I'm going to get in trouble for talking about this probably, so let's move on to something else. Danny and Davy and I would, we had this set that I got for Christmas called Creepy Crawlers, and you would pour this rubber material into these molds along with some various dyes to make them whatever color you wanted, and you could make scorpions and spiders and ladybugs and whatever, and then you could scare people with them or whatever you wanted to do. Put them in someone's food, things like that. Mature things like that. Another thing I remember from that time was I had gotten my first skateboard, and this was when skateboards had first been invented. So you young people out there will not recognize what I tell you about the skateboards. They were made out of wood, a big oval of wood, because that's what surfboards were. The surfboards had transitioned to fiberglass, but not for very long before the skateboards came out. This would have been about 1965 or something like that. And the wheels on the skate, there was very little flexibility to the board itself. It could flex just a little bit. And the wheels were a hard compound, not rubber, not soft rubber, pliable. So they had no grip at all. They might as well have been metal. So the only thing you could really do with the skateboard, and the wheels were out almost under the very ends, and so all you could really do was scoot down the street on the thing. We didn't know anything then about tricks, flipping the board, or doing the annoying stuff kids do today, where they keep flipping it up and down and it slams over and over on the speed bump outside your house until you're tempted to go out with a shotgun. Not to shoot the kid, of course, but to shoot his skateboard. Of course, I would never do anything like that, but anyway, yeah. I painted my skateboard all kinds of different colors when I was bored one summer afternoon. I had some hobby paints, and I remember painting all kinds of bright colors with, this was the pre-psychedelic era, but I was into art and stuff even at that age. So why am I getting distracted by the Father's Day tool sale? I have a set just like this Makita drill. I don't know, I was looking at this flyer for some, I'm gonna do a newspaper video because I picked up a copy of the paper today. Anyway, what else did we do in the summers? About once per summer I would go to Disneyland with my uncle, and I think I told you about that in a previous video. He was like my best buddy because he was only 3 years older than me and also very aspy. And we'd go hang out for 16 hours, and go to Tom Sawyer's Island and whatever we could do there that was fun. Wait in line for an hour and a half to go on the submarine or the Matterhorn ride or whatever, the futuristic rides, and of course the train, the desert train and stuff like that. But back to the more mundane. I used to play games with my old man, and he stayed young at heart. He still is. The guy's like 82 years old. No, he's only 81, but he still plays golf and stuff. Very competitive, So we used to play Stratego and stuff like that. I would play chess with my uncle because he was very cerebral, Here's something my uncle and I would do, for example, to entertain ourselves. You remember those green plastic army men that you could get in a bag of 50 or 100 if you're old enough to remember pre-video game days? Of course, there was no video games then. Anyway, we had a big sand pit out in the backyard, and there was a cinder block wall around all the perimeter of the yard, so it was totally enclosed. So in this sand pit, we would set up armies. So my uncle would set up his army guys, and I would set up my army guys. So let's say 25 guys apiece, right? And little cannons and stuff like that. Then we would get back about 20 feet, and we each had a BB gun, and we would shoot at the other guy's army men, and whoever could knock down all the other army guys the quickest won. So sometimes there was one last man standing, and you just couldn't hit that guy. I tried to be clever and make them sideways and whatever I could do to make them harder to hit, and push them down in the sand a little bit, so there wasn't too much of them showing. But of course my uncle was smart, so he caught on to that in a hurry. He got a cool bike for his birthday one year. No, wait, it was for Christmas, and it was called a Schwinn Stingray. It had just come out. All bikes before that were the boring kind with large wheels, and a big frame and one speed, and kid bikes anyway. And no one had invented a really fun bike like this. Short wheels, close wheelbase, banana-shaped seat, curved handlebars, so that you could do tricks and stuff. Anyway, I was jealous of that bike because I had this clunky old used one-speed standard, old type bike. So I asked him if I could ride on his bike for a few minutes, and he basically said, yes, as soon as hell freezes over, you can ride on it. So I said to myself, I guess I'm just going to have to get on it and take off. And I don't normally do things like that, but in this case I did. I was bad. And he saw me doing it, and I knew he saw me, and I didn't know how mad he would get, but I could see this look of murderous rage come over his face that I got on his brand new Christmas bike. And then suddenly I thought to myself, my life is in danger. I'm gonna have to pedal away as fast as I can possibly go. So I took off, and he came running after me, screaming, and I literally feared for my life. And I went as fast as I could, and he came like 2 feet away. I could hear his footsteps coming closer until I finally got up enough speed to pull away. And I thought, oh my gosh, I made it. I survived. Well, I got down to the end of the block, and I could see that he had run out of steam. And by now he was so mad, he didn't want to come after me anymore. So he turned around and started walking back to the house. And in that moment, I felt so bad because I had violated his, the sanctity of his personhood. So I'm going, wait, Denny, I won't ride the bike. I got off and I was walking it carefully back. I'm about a block away by now, right? I'm walking it back to show him I'm walking it up on the sidewalk like I won't even get the tire dirty, I promise. But he was so mad he wouldn't talk to me for days. So, but he got over it anyway, eventually, Um, there's a moral to the story in there somewhere, but I don't know what that is. Okay, so if I thought about it long enough, I might. What other trouble? I used to get on my clunky old bike. It had a little rack thing on the back. Now, mind you, in Alhambra and Rosemead, they're giant residential areas, and there are millions of people in the LA basin. So it's awfully hard to find nature there or fishing, but I found a way. I would dig up worms in the yard and put them in a little container, and I would take Velveeta cheese and salmon eggs and a basic fishing kit that I had and a breakdown pole that came in sections, kind of similar. Well, it was before these telescoping type I showed you the other day. So the pole could actually fit inside my tackle box, and I would put that thing on my handlebars, like hang it over the handlebar, because it had a handle on it, right? I didn't have a proper rack I could strap things to. And I would ride that bike to this place called Legg Lake, Legg Lake. And in the summertime, I'd get up at the crack of dawn. I would ride there, and I would catch bluegills and little bass. They weren't very big. They were usually in the 6 to 8 inch size range. But I thought that was just fantastic because I loved to fish. And this Legg Lake was about 3 miles away. When I look back on it, I had to go down a pretty busy highway to get there. My parents never knew what I was doing, like most kids back then. They weren't overprotective the way parents are now. Now your parents would go to jail for neglect or something if their kid walked down the block to play with a friend. But back then we could do what we wanted as long as we got all of our chores done. So yeah, in the winter time I could catch trout in that lake, and I did. They would plant trout in the winter, and I caught some. It was a lot of fun. I would bring them home, and I knew how to clean them and everything. So I found a way, and what else? There's so many stories. I could tell you dozens of stories. Like the big rage then was they built these slot car racing places that you would go to, and you would have a controller and your little car, right? And you would rent track time and race against other. This was a fad that came and went within about 1 year, but it was a lot of fun. We couldn't afford really good cars, so we weren't very competitive, but we had a blast when we did it. It was like 25 cents per half hour for the track time or something. And so they would have these big elaborate tracks that they put in this building, and you would race. You had your own car and your own controller, and you would race other players. But of course, some of them had really smart electronics dads and stuff who would, hop up their cars with super juiced little electric motors and things. They would change out the coils and the magnets to make them more powerful. So Yeah, it was hard to stay. You know what? This thing is calling me, calling my name. I'm remembering the nostalgic feel of the warm, semi-tropical summer LA basin, unbreathable, smoggy air. This was before pollution controls, okay? So, if you walked outside some days in the summer, you had a sore throat and burning eyes within about 4 minutes. We had one room with an air conditioner, the back den, and I would hang out there sometimes. It kind of filtered that air. Plus, it was cold. The rest of the house would be roasting hot, but that den would be, the Antarctic. I'm going to do a global warming series ASMR soon, I promise. Now, my GF Scorpio Ann called me just as I started this video, so I stopped and restarted and told her I would only be on here for 10 minutes max, and I see that it's already 26 and a half minutes. So I'm going to have to revisit our nostalgia days, kid stories, in a follow-up video at some point. Until then, don't ASMR and drive. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.